19th, 2020. I sure do hope that you're having yourself a good morning and you're doing all that you can to ensure that you stay free of the COVID-19 viruses. Of course, the world continues to face a challenge that is unprecedented and no one seems to know which direction this is going to take. Of course, as a country, as a nation, we continue to do all that we possibly can to ensure that we keep ourselves virus free. And of course, that is what is going to be captured in the dailies this morning. We have a question of the day which I'm going to indulge you in just a bit. But first of all, we're going to be looking at what's making headlines on the dailies this morning. Starting off with the Standard, as expected, we have Mr. President, Kenyans want more money. Of course, one of the things that's going to take a great hit, or has already taken a hit, is the economy. So how is the president going to navigate through this and ensure that the country does not get into a slump that it cannot get out of? As it was put in one of the dailies yesterday, the economy could get into a coma. We do know that it was already ailing and doing pretty badly compared to how it was expected to be at this time of the year. But now, this situation making it worse and could actually get the country into what the economists are calling a financial coma. So, Mr. President, Kenyans want more money. Government marshals banks to provide loans in a positive step to prop up the economy. As the country edges closer to a total lockdown, drastic measures are needed to stop pandemic from wiping out entire sectors and livelihoods. Of course, one of the areas that is likely to take a very big hit and the recovery would actually be 50-50 is SMEs, small, medium enterprises. And on that particular front, we have the government offering bailouts to worst hit sectors of SMEs, the likes of horticulture, hotel and travel to secure investments and jobs. Remember, just yesterday we had a picture of what's happening in the horticultural sector, and flowers, of course, are those that cannot wait in terms of when their time to be harvested has come. It has come, but there is nobody to buy the flowers, and that, of course, has become a huge challenge. We also do know that the tourism sector has taken a huge hit by virtue of the fact that travel bans have been, implemented world over, with foreigners not allowed to enter countries. Some countries in total lockdown, but like Kenya, we have, returning residents allowed to come back, but of course with major restrictions, with them being demanded to self-quarantine for 14 days to ensure that when they come into the country, they are coronavirus free. Central Bank also to cut costs on borrowing by half to facilitate cheap credit as a result of what is expected to cushion the economy right now. Stop companies from laying off workers effective today for 6 months. So companies are going to be stopped by law, by the government, from laying off workers, and that is effective from today for the next 6 months. Again, this is a very, very fluid situation, so nobody knows how it's going to go, how it's going to pan out, how long some of these restrictions are going to go on for, and as a country we can only but do our part. We also have the VAT and other taxes for 6 months to ease cash flow, or rather allow companies to defer payments of VAT and other taxes for 6 months to ease cash flow and stall job cuts. Also freeze payee to put more money in workers' pockets to boost spending. This, of course, is a suggestion that has been given that those who earn less than 50,000 and below, they should be given a 50% payee cut. In other words, their payee should be 50%, putting more money in their pocket. For those who earn 50,000 and above, then a 20% cut on their pay as you earn. That's one of the suggestions that's been given. So that's the headline. Mr. President, Kenyans want more money. To the question that we'd like to share with you this morning and find out what your take is the government doing enough to protect Kenyans from counterfeit sanitizers and masks in the market? Later on, we're going to be talking to an official from KEBS and would like to find out What exactly are they doing to ensure that the sanitizer that now we are so dependent on is actually legitimate? What if it's just a liquid that smells good that you're using? So is the government doing enough to protect Kenyans from counterfeit sanitizers and masks in the market? Again, when it comes to the quality of that sanitizer, we're told that it's supposed to be, I believe, 60 or 70% alcohol, 60% and above in terms of alcohol content. So how do we verify? How do we know that this is something that is actually adhered to with the sanitizers that we are buying from the pharmacies or wherever you're getting your sanitizer from? There's also the notion where they've said you can actually make your own sanitizer. So what are the quantities that one is supposed to use? There's a ratio of water or liquids that is there, because again, don't forget that the ethanol that is contained in that sanitizer can also damage your skin. So what protectant elements do we have to put if we're to make it at home? How do we do that? But more importantly, the sanitizers that we're buying, right now, if I look at the compliance that we have right here at Standard Group, right from the gate to the studio, there's about 4 points where you can actually sanitize, but of course, that only works if that sanitizer is legitimate and meets the required standards. So that's the question that we're asking. Is the government doing enough to protect Kenyans from counterfeit sanitizers and masks? We'll be looking at your comments as we carry on. Still on the front page of the Standard, a little bit stepping aside from the coronavirus, chaotic, filthy city now in the hands of a soldier. Yesterday, we saw the completion of the handing over of some of the, duties from county government to some of the dockets from county government to national government, and the newly formed office is expected to reform water and sanitation, sewerage, health, roads, and housing sector. So the soldier that is now in charge of Nairobi County, so to speak, is Major General Mohammed Abdallah Badi. And some of the mandates that he has, or rather the mandate that he has to ensure that this is done, he will work with the National Youth Service to reactivate county garbage collection, vehicle trucks, and other equipment that have been grounded for a long time. We do know, and we're seeing pictures on social media and main media, what we call legacy media, doing rounds of the filth that Nairobi is currently under. And this, of course, is nothing new for residents of Nairobi. So hopefully this is going to jumpstart and kick off a cleaning exercise that's going to be involving the National Youth Service. The new office will be required to identify and gazette solid waste disposal sites for use by both public and private collection service providers. One of the biggest problems that we have had as a nation and as a city, particularly Nairobi, is garbage disposal. What do we do with our garbage? We normally empty it and throw it out anywhere and everywhere, which of course becomes an environmental hazard. It will also crack down on illegal dump sites and oversee enforcement of affluent discharge from industry and restaurant. As we continue to guard and hopefully take care of our environment, one of the things that they're going to do is ensure that industries that are now disposing of their waste do it in a way that is environmentally friendly. It will also outline key strategies for equitable and better management of water distribution services and rationing program to ensure water cartels don't interrupt services. One of the things that they must ensure that they take care of is water. That's page 10 of the Standard this morning. We do know that water has been a huge challenge in this country and in this city. And if we would have somebody who can actually take care and sort out the water issues that we have in the city, that would be a very, very welcome thing, because, they say, and it is true, that water is a very, very basic need. So in this day and age, over 50 years after independence, when we still struggle to have water running in our taps, then something is a problem. Of course, there's the issue of global warming that one might want to cite, that generally speaking, the world over is suffering from water shortage. Remember, some time not too long ago, Cape Town was literally at a place where they did not have water, where they would not even use their toilets adequately by virtue of the fact that water had had completely run out. So it's not a Kenyan problem, a uniquely Kenyan problem, but it is one that we obviously must come together to ensure that we take care of. Let's look at other stories. And on page 3, we have banks promising to ease loan burdens, and the CBK also says it will hold on to cash coming from banks for a week to avoid passing on the virus to people. And this, of course, is we're in interesting times, and they're taking as much precaution as they can. And one of those being just the hard cash that we transact with. Once it gets into the bank, they will ensure that it is not released for at least a week to give the virus, if at all there is any virus on those notes that are presented into the bank, time for it to die out. So everybody doing their little bit that they can to ensure that that happens. But apart from that, customers can now engage with their banks to extend their loan repayment for at least 1 year. And this is those of you that may have loans with banks. Of course, one of the things that's likely to take a hit is loan repayments. And you know they accumulate interest. The more you default on payment, the more interest you pay. So, of course, that can now get to a point where loans become bad loans and are not payable. But according to Central Bank, they say now what you can do, you can go and negotiate with your bank, and they have allowed for that so that they can defer payments for at least 1 year. But hoping that this coronavirus issue is going to be a thing of the past, and we can look back and say, well, that was one difficult thing. Of course, as we continue to battle with this, one of the advice WHO has given and generally is trying to be implemented is working from home. But how practical is that? On page 4 of the Standard this morning, companies not ready to work from home. And this, of course, is basics like internet connectivity. How many people do have access to a device, a laptop that they can use to ensure that the work that they need to get done is done? We also have companies that do not allow external connections on the local platform. So if your work is such that you need to work on the local platform, maybe the website or a local a network, that is within the local network, there are some companies, because of security and safety, they do not allow any connection from outside the company. It's a closed connection. So 2 in every 3 firms do not have the necessary technology to allow their staff to operate from outside the office. And I guess, well, they say that sometimes things come as a blessing in disguise. So this might be a time for us to test technology. It might be a time for us to ensure that we do as much as we can to make technology work. And only less than a third of Kenyan companies have the infrastructure that enables their employees to work from home, official data shows. So as much as companies would like to have their workers or their employees working from home, question is how practical is that? Of course, there's also the question of manual labor, which requires for you to be there physically for work to be done. And of course, that's going to be another challenge. And question is also regarding workforce, the people that totally depend on what you'd call a daily wage. They're manual laborers and are paid on a daily basis. So they appear, work, and they're paid at the end of the day. Now, when we ask them to stay home, how do they get their daily bread and how do they work? So that's something that, of course, the government may have to look at how to close that gap, whether it is by virtue of providing what in America they call food stamps or, vouchers, food vouchers, where somebody can actually go and get food. And that is just to ensure that we are basically surviving. Drug companies seek vaccine as cases surge, and of course, page 5 of the Standard, where we have companies looking for solutions. And this is a time, again, everybody needs to put their best foot forward in regards to what they do. So we have companies and experts warn that it could take up to a year to 18 months to approve any vaccine. So, of course, some of the procedures that need to be taken through for them to actually confirm if a vaccine is indeed found, and secondly, if it can be used. So it may take a year to 18 months to approve any vaccine. Drug companies and researchers are racing against time to develop a vaccine against the novel coronavirus COVID-19. The United Kingdom joined the United States, China, Germany, Israel in the search for a vaccine, even as the global caseload had exceeded 200,000 cases. So, of course, we continue to pull at every angle and corner that we can. Now, another challenge that we have as a country is, like I mentioned, that of water. Page 6 of the Standard. Washing hands is a luxury in slum life. We're even talking about social distance, where we look at how far can you stay from the person next to you. But when it comes to informal settlements, of course, the question is, how far can they even stay practically from others? So water becoming a major challenge. So more than 500,000 people who live in Mukuru slums, Nairobi, have to choose between buying food and buying water to wash their hands multiple times. So we're not even talking about sanitizers here, which are more expensive than water, but where do they get the soap? Where do they get the water? So, of course, a challenge right there. As Europe and much of the developed world shuts down in the face of the coronavirus, many millions of people haven't much hope in following the WHO advice in washing hands and keeping their distance. So, of course, these are some of the challenges that we realize as a country we continue to grapple and face as, again, if somebody has to debate between buying water to wash their hands and buying food, it's obvious. They are obviously going to buy food and they leave the rest to in God's hands. On page 7 of the Standard, farm employees now sent home as flour exports deep. And this, of course, is a trend that is likely to go on, unfortunately, unless there is a solution that is found. More than 1,000 workers from various flour farms in Naivasha have been sent home as the financial crunch caused by the coronavirus epidemic deepened. The most affected were seasonal workers who were sent home with 2 weeks' pay amid warning that their contracts could be terminated if the crisis continued. So at least a buffer of 2 weeks, but that can hardly do much in terms of cushioning them and keeping them off, or rather making sure that they have bread on their table and food on their table. On page 8, counties ill-equipped to fight pandemic, says COG chairman. That is none other than His Excellency Wycliffe Oparanya, who was saying that the counties are not well equipped when it comes to ensuring that they have everything needed, sanitizers, water. When it comes, I was talking to a doctor yesterday, and she intimated and mentioned that even they as doctors are at risk, because the question is, at the point where patients are coming in, how much time do they have between patients? What's the distance that they maintain between them and patients? At some point, they would have to come close range to patients. So that becomes, of course, a challenge. But counties are ill-equipped to fight the pandemic, says COG. And that's what we have. Much more on the Standard. Let's quickly whiz through the Daily Nation, where we have the headline as coronavirus, how to rescue the economy. The president, of course, with a very huge task of ensuring that despite what we're going through, SMEs will not shut down, things will not shut down. We have people that live hand to mouth, and of course, with this now coming in, it becomes that much more difficult. There's also the question of security. Without food, people are likely to go what you'd call to survival instincts, where they will do anything to ensure that they get some food. That could stretch our security situation in Kenya. Now, comprehensive package. Kenyans expect President Kenyatta to first make good his promise to come up with fiscal policy measures, including tax waivers for firms and the exemption of food and other basic goods, and enhance the social safety net to mitigate the impact of COVID-19. Is this going to happen? I guess he's also racking his head, given that nobody really knows the direction this is going to take. On page 3 of the Daily Nation, City Hall to begin fumigating the CBD in efforts to contain the rapid spread of the deadly coronavirus. So in case you see them fumigating and spraying all over, you know what that is all about. So City Hall begins fumigating the Central Business District this morning as the county government joins the war against the coronavirus spread. Of course, the advice from the World Health Organization and other health institutions is that we avoid intermingling and going. If you can avoid getting into the CBD, avoid it. If you can avoid walking around and going around, avoid it. But question is how practical that is for many. Critical services, of course, continue to be provided, and we wait and see how that goes. Page 5 of The Nation, 3 more test positive. Rise in suspected cases. We were at 4, now we're up to 7 as the official number of those that have tested positive to COVID-19. And the unique thing about the cases that are now being tested is that majority of them have come from abroad, and as a result, questions, of course, being asked, what do we do? Do we now completely bring a total lockdown and close the borders? What is the way forward? Schools have been closed, gatherings banned, and travel restrictions imposed. And, of course, the Ministry of Health doing as much as they can to ensure that this is contained. On page 6, we have busting the myths of the coronavirus. This is something that we're going to be discussing not too long from now with the Deputy Chair in the National Assembly in the Committee of Health. That is Honorable Swarup Rajan Mishra, Arab Chelule. We're going to be looking at some of the myths and some of the things that we need to know as Kenyans. There's a lot of fake news that's going round, and of course what that does, it heightens and makes the situation worse by people panicking and not knowing what to do and what to do. But we have busting the myths of the coronavirus. For instance, is it true that we being in a tropical country where it is hot, the coronavirus cannot survive? According to this particular article, that may not necessarily be true. And of course, we need to ensure that we stick to what is factual, what is scientifically proven, as opposed to going with what is just hearsay. That's what we have for you on the Daily Nation. I like to normally finish with the cartoon on page 14. Let's see what we have this morning. And we have a confession. I hereby extend the repayment period. That is the priest here being the governor of Central Bank, Dr. Njoroge. And we have borrowers, asking for forgiveness. They say, forgive us, governor. The interest rates are high. That's where we're going to wind up the newspaper review this morning. But a quick reminder of that question this morning, which is, do you think the government is doing enough to